mainly because of the pandemic. So earnings per share this quarter, 79 cents per share for the quarter, a whopping 249% increase. Next slide. Again, just showing you total assets of $20 billion, which is huge. An overall growth of 47% over the previous year, or approximately 9.1% in the first quarter alone. And this is predominantly made up of the $19.6 billion in publicly traded equities on the Jamaican Stock Exchange and about $400 million cash. So Mr. Berry has a little cash to do a little bit more if he wants. What's impressive about this is with the $16.3 billion of equity and $19.6 billion of assets, MJE only has about $3.3 billion in debt. So that's a leverage of under 20%, which again is very impressive. This obviously is a business which could take a little bit more margin or loans to further amplify the returns, but I like the conservative approach that the team at Mayberry is taking. NAV up to $13.60. We were just here 2 weeks ago. It was $12.46. So again, up by 9% in the first quarter, up by 49% year over year. So impressive growth considering the size of the fund. Next slide. And this shows us the top 10 stocks in the portfolio. The associates we have are, for instance, CPJ, SVL, and two others, Gary?
Blue Power.
Blue Power.
And
Lasco Finance. So those are the associates where you see us making the adjustment, separating the increase in value through fair value P&L for associates versus the rest of the portfolio. And here this shows you the whopping increase in the value of these top 10 stocks over the last year, led mainly by CPJ and JMMB and SVL over the last year. Next slide shows you a feel for the value of the top 5 stock additions in the quarter. Folks have started to ask us, to show what are our top 5 that we're adding or disposing of. And while we won't give forward information on that, we're happy to share after the fact what happened during the quarter. So in the first quarter of 2022, you can see that we added approximately 280 million Jamaican dollars worth of JMMB. We added some JPG, QWI, LASM, and a bit of GK. Next slide. This gives you a feel, again, for our top 10 largest holdings as opposed to the top 5 movements and top 10 overall. And again, no surprises here. Year over year, Supreme Ventures continues to be sort of the jewel of the war chest. CPJ has grown from 6.9 to 16% because of that whopping 400% growth in CPJ. So it's not that we've doubled down or tripled down on CPJ, but the performance of CPJ as one of our associate investments has been phenomenal and has taken that up to about 17% of our portfolio. And then you can see the spread of the other investments that we have. Next slide. This shows you in a graphical format what the NAV is looking like. And again, I said the NAV is up by 49% over the prior year, up to $13.60, up by 9.1% in the first quarter from $12.46. Again, very good, impressive. And overall, as we said on the last program, we still haven't seen the JSE main index recover fully. So when we see this NAV at 1360, when we look back at this historically, this NAV has been as high as $16, $18 in the past, and perhaps we'll see that on the next slide. This compares the NAV to the market price, and whenever you see the NAV above the market price as it is in this picture, $13.60 versus $7.65, $7.65 being the market price as at March 31st, 2022. That market price yesterday was up to $9.43. So even at $9.43, folks, there's still a great buying opportunity for MJE because the NAV's at $13.60 and climbing. Next slide. I did say and climbing. And so on the next slide, you see the blue graph. Again, that NAV's been up, the blue line's the NAV, and the orange line is the share price. Shown graphically, you can see where the NAV has been as high as $16 in the past, how the pandemic dragged that right down to a low of about $8.20 thereabouts, and how since the pandemic we've blown up that NAV from the low of 820 now to where it's at, 13, and I think we're headed back to $16, $18 as the market fully recovers. So the market has not yet fully recovered. Trust me when I tell you that. And yet we see where the share price continues to trade at a discount to the NAV, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on in the program. But as Gary has said in past programs, wherever you see that blue line above the orange line, that means there's a great opportunity to buy the stock, because over time as the market matures, I fully expect that the stock price is going to trade much closer to the NAV. It cannot be trading at 30% discount to the NAV, and we watch the value of the stock go, the value of the portfolio grow from 13 billion to 16 billion now to $20 billion. Still not too late to buy some MGE, guys. Next slide, as we look to wrap up. Actually, we're finished. I think we want to get into some Q&A, and I don't know who to ask first, but I'm going to start with Gary. Gary, you need to explain to me what's going on at Mayberry. You guys, MGE in particular, you make a $3 billion profit in 2021. I know some people wondered, was that a fluke? And you followed up with $1 billion gain in the first quarter of 2022. What's happening at MGE?
Well, fundamentally, the Jamaican economy continues to rebound, and obviously that's what we're seeing in the first quarter. When we put out the numbers for 2021, you can see that we had a very good year. And when you look at the movement in the first quarter, you're seeing continued movement from CPJ, which continues to do very well. The Supreme Ventures, whilst being the mainstay in the portfolio, the movement in Supreme has been rather marginal. And as you know, one of the main reasons we have Supreme in the portfolio is the dividend income.
Absolutely.
I heard you mention earlier that the dividend income is almost twice what the interest expense is, which is a good position to be in. So that dividend income allows for the payment of the expenses of the organization, and then for a little dividend if we choose to pay a dividend at that point in time. The rest of the portfolio, again, you look on the businesses that have been recovering. You know, a question was asked when we put out the numbers for last year about JMB. The chairman was pretty coy in his response, but you'd have seen in the top 5 additions for the first quarter, JMB was one of our top 5, and obviously he couldn't give it away at that point in time. And JMB has been inverters. You know, one of the things about what we do is to identify value. And Mayberry has been indicating for several months now, I would actually go as far as a year, that JMB is one of the most undervalued stocks in the portfolio on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Absolutely.
And you know, I think you went as far as to say, you know, anything below 40 is just buy. And you know our mantra: the longer it stays undervalued, the more resources we can find to buy it until it starts to show its value. And we saw where JMB started to show that value. And ironically, JMB holds a position as the second most undervalued, actually the third most undervalued stock on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Do you know what number 1 and number 2 most undervalued stocks are?
I don't know. I think you're going to tell me, though.
It's Mayberry and Mayberry Jamaican Equities. You know, so we've been in this business Mayberry has been in business for 36 years. And the reality is that the majority of the monies that Mayberry has made over the 30-odd years is by buying these stocks. And when we first put together the portfolio for MJE, it was somewhere around 2006, 2007. The value of the portfolio then was approximately 10 million US. It's now 2022. It's approximately 15 years later, and the value of that portfolio exceeds 130 million US. And all of that has come from investing in the Jamaican Stock Exchange, and also after we have been putting out research to the public, telling people to buy stocks, and the majority of people still don't buy this stock, which is fine for us. We'll go and make another 130 million for the next over the next 10 years, right? But if you wanna share in it, you have 2 choices. You can go and buy your own portfolio, or buy the only stock you need to own, which is Mayberry Jamaican Equities. I close by saying to you, we were very happy when we produced the result for 2021. It showed an earnings of approximately $2 something. And what you're seeing in the first quarter is at $1 billion in terms of your net profit. That translates to just under 80 cents a quarter. 8.4 is 32, $3.20. You know, the main market average is 18 times. But for simple math, if we discount that to 10 times $3.20.
$32.
And where is it trading now?
It's trading at $9.43.
No, that was yesterday.
I didn't pay today. I didn't pay
So-
attention today. Where's the trading now, Mr. Berry?
12.27.
So there you go. Some people are picking it up. It has moved from $9 to $12. But again, guys, this is not, you know, again, no pun intended. This is not playing the lottery. But the equities market has created more wealth, I think, probably than any other market in the marketplace. And you can start by investing in the equities market with as low as $1,000. Or if you want to buy into Mayberry Jamaican Equity, you can buy the shares off the market. It is not, you don't need a significant amount of money, but you will get exposure to the management of a professionally managed portfolio that is just throwing off value over time.
I appreciate that, Gary. Now, listen, I've been here for 4 years, 3 months, guys, and I remember when I started my first day here under the tutelage of Mr. Berry. A lot of folks said, "Damn, Theok, what are you doing going over to Mayberry? You're swimming with the sharks." And I'm going to tell you a true story. I had come into some income and I wanted to make a large investment, and Mr. Berry gave me my first start. I don't know if you remember Mr. Berry. It was a big figure for me, a very little figure for him. And today that portfolio is up 159%. And I could not have done it without Chris Berry here on my
Give
left.
some numbers, Dan.
Gary
Some
Perry
people
on my
go under percent. Give some
Listen,
numbers.
When I give
You
advice,
use $10. Use $10. So you invested $10. How much you worth now?
I invested.
$1,000.
Yes,
Or 10,000. Let's use 100. Let's use $1 million.
let's use 100 million if you
No,
don't
let's use
mind.
$1 million. You invested $1 million. How much you worth now?
So if I invested 10 million 4 years ago, that 10 million is now worth $25 million. I'm up 155%. And
That's a lot of party.
it wasn't 10 million, by the way, folks. It was a lot more. So I'm very thankful, Mr. Berry. Now, Mr. Berry, you started this journey with the MJE portfolio, as Gary said, back 2006, 14 years ago. I mean, be honest, did you ever imagine you would grow that portfolio to north of $100 million with so little leverage? This is the thing that I'm finding amazing.
Well, I don't think about growth in those terms. I just think about it like, hey, you can invest in JMDs and get a negative return on your money. You can invest in US and get 2%, or you can invest in stocks and make a much larger return. So for me, I just focus on finding undervalued companies and investing in them. And, as long as you're beating the other alternatives, then, hey, why count the numbers?
And you're obviously playing the patient game, because again, I've made investments and I'm trading notes with them. I see my stock up 300% and I'm thinking time to sell, and Mr. Berry is like, "No, Dan, no, you're selling too fast." So you're obviously playing the long and patient game, and that's why we see this portfolio going from 10 billion to 12 billion to 14 billion to now $20 billion.
Well, I will put it another way. So the way you have to think about it like this is like, every time you sell a security, you end up with cash. Then you have to find another one to buy.
Right.
So if you have a good investment that's still growing, then you shouldn't be thinking of selling. And you're just giving yourself more work, unnecessary work. So I think when you have a good horse, you stick on a horse and you ride it. If things change materially and you don't see that the company is going to be profitable over the long term, or it's going down a road which is not good for growth, then that's the time you jump off the horse. So that's basically what we do here, and it's been working for us for a long time.
It obviously is working quite well. Last one for me, Chris. The portfolio feels to me, and this is just Dan Theok here, and what do I know about managing a $20 billion portfolio? It feels like you're being very conservative with the level of leverage you have. The market's coming back. There's a lot of space for growth. Again, with only net $2.5 billion worth of debt, it means your debt to total cap is only 13%. Surely, as you look to grow the portfolio in the future, you may consider using a little bit more leverage to amplify returns?
I think from the beginning, we set out that we didn't really want to go above 20% debt. And it would have to be something really attractive for us to really think about changing that. I mean, what we've found over the 37-year journey we've made is that, Jamaica is like a rocky road thing, road rocky. So you have to have good shoes bottom, because when the road get rocky, you have to last out that rocky part. And so when you have too much debt, you have problems. What is a great portfolio, of course, becomes a nightmare. So we don't want to do too much debt. I think, with the whole 2011 IMF agreement, which we're now out of, and the whole new fiscal responsibility, which seems that both PNP and JLP accept that as a given, it's kind of made the whole financial situation in Jamaica a lot less volatile. And as we go forward and things improve and we see less volatility there, maybe we can take on some more debt, but not right now.
Appreciate that. Of course, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to send them in, and we'll try to make a few minutes to entertain them. Again, I think MJE is well poised for growth, with your dividend income exceeding your cost of funding 2 times and such low leverage. Gary, can you tell me, 1 or 2 companies in the portfolio that you're really excited about, and what your expectations in terms of growth, or I know you can't give us too much, for the next 9 months of the year as we really come out of this pandemic. What's exciting you, and other than Supreme Ventures, where you spend half your time, what's exciting you in this portfolio, and where can we really look to see more growth from MJE?
Well, what excites me is that my handle is scratching me. Right?
It's a code for something.
When your handle is scratchy, you have to scratch it. So the guys at SVL, I think, have executed one of the best, if not the greatest, marketing launch of a product, which is Scratch and Win, and I think.
Which guys you talking about?
Supreme Ventures. The team at Supreme Ventures.
You mean that guy Gary Peart that run
the team. And I think almost everybody in Jamaica is scratching, and the fact is that launch took place in the 2nd week of March. The numbers for Supreme should be released at the end of this month, so we'll all get an opportunity to see what is happening there. But more importantly, so that's Scratch, and Scratch is doing well. But more importantly, all the rules surrounding the curfews, etc., were relaxed on or around February. We have several businesses that were severely impacted by it. And so for the 2nd quarter, going for the next nine months, we're now going to see those businesses blossom. So we have a box business where the key time to earn revenue was between 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning, which the curfew significantly impacted.
Right.
So that will now start to blossom. And we have a variety of other businesses, the horse racing, because you can have simulcast now from the West Coast before, because the time lag.
Yep.
And you couldn't get that before because of the curfew. So we expect the results for that business to start to look a little bit better for this year. CPJ, again, we've seen what CPJ has done in their 2nd quarter. If you put things into perspective, since this company has been listed, it has never made more than $4 million US in 1 year, and they made $5 million US in a quarter, basically. Yeah. And so that's huge. And so we expect them to continue, maybe not at the same pace, but certainly that pace will be greater than what we're seeing before. And so we expect that business to continue to do well. JMB we've taken it on in the portfolio, as came out in the question and answer the last time. There are a lot of legs left in JMB. I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, every pension fund manager, every asset manager in Jamaica, is waiting on JMB to pop. As I was explaining to a guy today, JMB will be the next big beige kite. When the wind catches sails, you won't be able to catch the price where that is going on. So, but we still have the opportunity because when we released the numbers for the full year last year, it was clear to a lot of people that the prices were going higher. And so those people who took the advantage and bought MJE would have benefited from the 20 or 30% jump in the price of MJE. And these companies I expect to do much better as the year continues. Grace Kennedy is another one that has just been shooting the lights out, using a basketball term. They'll continue to invest. They have a lot of cash on their balance sheet. And, it's so interesting. Grace has always had the cash on his balance sheet and has not really done a lot of investing. But one of the things we know is that when you start to invest and you invest and invest properly and you get the return, you start to invest bigger and bigger and bigger again. And I suspect Grace is going to get that bug because they have a lot of cash on their balance sheet. Don is somebody who's very risk aware, but at the same time, he can balance risk and reward. So, as he puts his feet out there and start to spend some of that cash, I think Grace Kennedy can be one of the biggest performers in the portfolio for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
so, Gary, Chemo Online is asking when we can expect the financial stocks to start recovering.
Well, in Jamaica, it depends on which one, because I think just like any other business, everybody's portfolio is structured differently. And one of my cause for concerns is that we've come out of COVID, 160,000 people lost jobs, several businesses, for example, in the entertainment industry, suffered, etc. We've come out of COVID, and it's like everything was good for everybody. So where the body's buried, and I think we need to give the financial institutions some time to sort out a lot of those things, because now that we're getting a better feel for them. A lot of those businesses put on a lot of debt on their portfolio. On their balance sheet, and we're going to have to work that through. We don't know how those businesses are dispersed throughout the different banks. Yeah, you have two major banks in the country. You have a third one coming, and so if I'm a betting man, I would think it will be after the September quarter before you get a feel for what is really happening on the overall financial sector. The good thing is that security dealers like Mayberry, to a lesser extent, JMB, because JMB is not going into the banking business, how their business is structured, every liability they have on their balance sheet has to be secured with an asset. Yeah. So a lot of the security dealers would not really be exposed to retail loans, etc. So those smaller security dealers, which we refer to as financial institutions as well, I expect them to start to show better results earlier rather than later. So look forward to a Mayberry group itself results, and that would probably give you some answers to your questions. Smaller guys like Cygnus, etc., they're in a space where I think they will start to show better numbers quicker than the larger commercial banks.
Thanks for that. Mr. Berry, you made a huge bet, I believe, on Edufocal and worked with Gordon for 2 years behind the scene before we eventually saw him go public last month. And now we see that stock trading north of $3 and a lot of activity. Gordon's already done his first acquisition of a business. Tell us some of your expectations and what did you see in Gordon that made you make that private equity jump?
Well, Gordon had a proven product. When I started getting involved with him, the numbers weren't that pretty, but he was definitely, people were buying the product. And people were saying, hey, this product helped my kid to get into this or that high school. People were very happy with the product. The product was also applicable to a lot of different learning environments, not only for PEP, but corporate Jamaica. And if you know Gordon is like full of energy type of guy.
Great
You
guy.
know, he doesn't really put a limit on how he sees himself or his company growing, and his goal really is to be an international company. And we like betting on small guys who work hard, and we just took a chance, and I think it's coming out real good. Um, you know, one of the shocking things about us is that after 60 years of independence, the results coming out of our school system are pretty less than we would like,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
And there was a recent study by Orlando Patterson and some other Jamaican folks that highlighted really how bad it is. So my challenge to Gordon is like, hey, I would love to see your company being one of the organizations that can help to really change that dynamic so that we can get better outcomes in the school system. Because, as Jamaicans live in all sorts of places, some of them pretty remote, don't have access to, good infrastructure and all of that. So, his footprint's pretty light and mobile. He does things like he can open up a school in a very small space. So I'm hoping that, as he, gets a grip around all of those things he wants to do, that, it can grow and actually become a kind of transformational company for Jamaica. That would mean a lot more to me than any money we could make on Edifocal, actually.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that. And so it's good to see us investing in education. I know that's a big thing at Supreme Ventures as well, too, with the Chase Fund and other commitments. People think of it as a gambling company, but it's a lot more than just that, Gary. Gaming company. It's a lot more than that. Do you want to speak to a little bit about some of the stuff you guys are doing? I did have one question here. I don't know if you can speak to it. And someone said, Mr. Parrott, can you tell us about the Fintech side of SVL? What's that?
So, which question do you want answered first?
Fintech.
Fintech. So SVL, it's difficult to answer this question without giving away some stuff to come. But whatever businesses you can think of in the fintech space, SVL is in a position to do that. So the amount of transactions that SVL does every day rivals some of the largest organizations in the country. So again, people focus on the fact that we're gambling, but there are some other underlying opportunities and benefits associated with the business that makes an entry into fintech very probable. And so therefore, I think over the next 6 months, you will see us putting forward some offerings in that space, which I think will help to democratize a lot of businesses in Jamaica. And, some of the simple things I can speak to, we had fixed lottery, meaning you would walk into a space and buy a lottery. Now you can do it on your phone. And so whilst buying lottery on your phone in and of itself is not fintech, it's associated with it in certain ways in terms of online presence. And what you will find is very likely that the amount of business that we are driving in that space in the country right now is probably unrivaled.
Right.
Yeah. And,
What you mean by that?
So I'm trying to choose my words,
Yes.
Mr. Berry.
So as a financial
Are you
analyst,
saying that you have a big online business embedded in that?
Yes.
That SVL?
Yeah, I think by unrivaled, as an analyst, I have nothing to do with SVL. The point is they're handling a huge amount of cash monthly, upwards of $4 or $5 billion cash. And I think what fintech...
We're up to $2 billion a week now.
Yes, $2 billion a week. And fundamentally, I think what fintech is about, what excites me about fintech is us trying to take the cash out of the system and try to work with the unbanked and create channels for them to come into a more formalized system. And I think, for those of you who are smart enough, there's a great opportunity for SVL there, I think.
So there is, but not in the way that a lot of people think, Dan. So,
I'm sure, and I don't know if you can tell us, but we look forward to it.
So what I'll say to you is that cash is actually a positive for us. So a lot of people are going out of cash, but we will go deeper into cash because it's a positive for us. So we have certain solutions associated with cash. The point you raise is also logical in the sense that whilst we generate a lot of cash, the fintech products would allow us to use that cash internally. But I'll ask you to broaden your mind in the sense that I have 2,000 points of sale.
Yeah.
So point A might generate, but point B might need.
Correct.
You know, so the question is, how do you get from point A to point B? Do you use a third party that has charges? What's the value of those charges? How can we eliminate it by doing things a little bit different? And so there's that. But as I said, what excites us is that in the fintech space, I mean, obviously this is subject to the various approvals, etc. There's certain businesses that I think are very complementary to our current customer base. Mm-hmm. And I think once we move them to those products, because as I alluded to before, we actually have one of the largest online businesses, meaning it's not something to talk about in the sense that it's a nice software. It works. We're doing transactions. We're doing several transactions. We're doing high-value transactions. And
so what's the size of that online business?
It's big.
It's big.
It's big.
You mean you don't know?
I know exactly what it is, but I would just say it's big. I would say to you that as we add more of these fintech products to it, it's going to get a lot bigger. But more importantly, I think we add these products in a way that appeal to our customer base. So they want to use it, and we're seeing that they're using it. So you have a diverse set of customers. So there's some people who will come and play our games on the phone. They like it because it's confidential. Somebody doesn't see them walking into a gaming space. They win on the phone, they collect on the phone, or they put their money on the phone, and they go down that road. They can do that with their credit card, their debit card, and it makes a lot of sense. And I close by saying it actually is setting the stage for a different demographic. So if you stop and think about it, I'm referring to debit and credit card.
Yep.
It's a demographic that is not my primary business.
Say no more. I hear you loud and clear.
Yes, but Dan, the most exciting part that Gary won't tell you is this. So SVL should be the primary partner for anyone who wants to promote digital money in the underbank space. Right? So our feeling is that in that underbank space, people put a premium on cash.
Right.
And we have the largest cash in, cash out network in the island of Jamaica. And we don't see these people going straight to digital. They need a bridge.
Right.
SVL is that bridge. So anybody out there who wants to launch a digital product to get to these underbank folks, if you're not talking to SVL, you are wasting your time.
I like the sound of that. The last question for you, Mr. Berry, before we close out, it comes in from Sheldon Spencer, and he's saying, can you make any comment about the relatively low volumes of shares traded in the Jamaican market, stock market, and what factors do you think, Mr. Berry, could help improve this?
Well, I mean, that's a very simple explanation. So what's happening is that you have 3 million people in Jamaica, and most of them actually either don't know about the stock market or they think of it as risky. And I would say on a risk-adjusted basis, the stock market is less risky than US dollar fixed income.
Wow.
So people don't know about it, so you have low volumes. But the thing you have to remember for that caller is that liquidity can be just as much of a friend as an enemy.
Right.
And the way you have to think about it is like this. If you spot an undervalued stock before the rest of the market, when people realize it's undervalued and they all want it, there's no liquidity. So what happens is the price goes up very quickly and you make super profits. So liquidity can be a friend or it can be an enemy.
Understood.
It just depends which side of the fence you want to be on.
And then Cheryl is asking what can be done to improve this. Would you say it's just education or?
Well, I think the liquidity has grown quite a lot in between the time we started and now. You know, investor education is a big thing. You know, we have the longest running investor education series of any company in Jamaica. And we're very happy to see that there are a lot of other companies now and individuals who have entered that space. And as more people get the word, more people will invest.
I appreciate that. And I think Mayberry is playing its part too, to be fair, in the number of IPOs that we keep turning out year after year. The number one investment bank in Jamaica by far when it comes to putting out IPOs. No one else comes close. You'd have to add up the other 8 guys to come close. Well, folks, you heard it here first today. The $1 billion comprehensive income 1.4 from MJE in the first quarter of the year on the back of a almost $3 billion performance last year. So we have to ask ourselves, what's coming in the next quarter? Stay tuned. And as long as you can get you some MJE
Dan,
stocks,
what's the PE of MJ?
the PE, what did we say, Gary? If you use 80 cents and assumed forward PE 4 times 8, 320, and the stock's only at $12, it's 4 times.
Oh, 4 times?
4 times. 4 times.
Sound cheap.
Very cheap. Very
What's the
cheap.
market average?
And the market average, I like to think the main market average is 15 times.
Right.
So this stock, you know,
So 4 PE, how many times it have to move to get to 15? 4 times?
4 times.
Okay.
So I definitely see this $12 value increasing significantly throughout the year. Go and get you guys some MJE before it's too late. We've said these things about CPJ, then we come back, it's up 400%. We say these things about Grace Kennedy, and it comes back, it's up 50%. We said
JMMB.
JMMB, and it's up 20% in the last month alone. And JMMB, guys, at $48, $50 is still a steal. That stock's going to be at $60 before you know it.
I think you should declare interest in our Dan.
In JMMB?
Yeah.
I would have to declare interest in everything, folks, because I have money in everything. But I have no board seats or any inside information associated with JMMB or even MJE.
Except Wigdon.
Wigton's the only one where I'm a board director. And that one speaks for itself. So the performance, Mr. Berry, we really appreciate it, Gary, for your time. The performance at MJE was spectacular. We're going to pretty much close out. We want to thank everybody for being a part of today's program. We appreciate the Q&A. I appreciate the participation from Chairman Berry and from Gary Perry.
And all the people who logged on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thanks everyone for being a part of today's program. And to our viewers, thank you for being a part of today's Investor Update. I want to thank my fellow panelists for the insights. Don't miss our Investor Forum, which resumes in the upcoming weeks. Be sure to follow us on social media to find out who our next speaker will be. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mayberry Investment Limited. Keep safe. And remember, wise investors, slow and steady wins the race. Bye-bye.